August 6, 1945, de late 8:15 a.m. Hiroshima. The morning is clear. Streetcars rattle through the city. Shop doors slide open. A school bell is about to ring. Then, without warning, the sky splits apart. For a fraction of a second, the light is brighter than the sun itself. Shadows burn onto stone. Skin tightens. Windows vanish. A pressure wave slams through Hiroshima, flattening homes, snapping bridges, lifting the city off its foundations. And then comes the silence, heavy, unnatural, before the screams begin. In that instant, war changes. What happened over Hiroshima was not just another bombing raid. It was the first use of an atomic weapon in human history, and within minutes it altered how World War II would end and how all future wars would be imagined. The bomb was meant to force a decision where months of firebombing had failed. It mattered because it collapsed time, compressing invasion plans, casualties, and political calculations into a single blinding moment. High above the city, the B-29 Enola Gay banks away. Its crew does not look back. The bomb, little boy, has already done its work. A mushroom cloud rises, climbing silently, steadily, as if the earth itself is exhaling. On the ground, Hiroshima is unrecognizable. Entire neighborhoods have ceased to exist. The Otta River is choked with debris and bodies. Survivors wander through ruins that are still burning, their clothes shredded, their skin burned raw. Many do not yet know they are dying. Then the radios fail. At the Imperial General Headquarters in Tokyo, reports from Hiroshima are fragmentary, confused. Communication with the city has gone dead. At first, officials assume another heavy conventional raid, like Tokyo in March. But reconnaissance planes sent hours later report something impossible. The city center has been erased, not damaged. Erased. The order changes. Within the U.S. command, the moment is measured, almost clinical. Operation Centerboard, I have succeeded. The weapon performed, as expected. Yet even among planners, there is unease. This was not simply a more powerful bomb. It was a new category of force, one that could not be defended against, one that did not require armies. Weeks earlier, at Potsdam, Allied leaders had warned Japan of prompt and utter destruction. Now that warning has a shape and a name. Still, Japan does not surrender that day. As night falls over Hiroshima, fires burn unchecked. Rain begins to fall, black with ash. Survivors search for family members who no longer have faces, names, or graves. Doctors work without supplies, without answers. Many injuries make no sense. People who seemed unharmed collapse hours later. And across the Pacific, planners realize something unsettling. One bomb did not end the war. The map is no longer the same. But the decision whether this new power will be used again has not yet been closed. Midday, Tokyo. The Imperial Palace stands untouched, its gardens calm in the summer heat. Inside, ministers study maps that no longer explain what they are seeing. Hiroshima has vanished, but not in the way cities usually vanish in this war. For months, Japan has endured destruction from the air. Tokyo burned in March. Osaka followed. Nagoya. Kobe. Entire districts reduced to ash by conventional firebombing. The logic of these attacks is grim but familiar. Many planes, many bombs, many hours. Hiroshima does not fit that pattern. The first detailed report arrives from a reconnaissance pilot. He describes a city flattened in a wide circular blast. No clusters of impact points, no gradual tapering of damage, just one center, and devastation radiating outward. The officer listening realizes something crucial. This was not a normal bomb. Within hours, scientists at the Army Technical Bureau are summoned. They speak carefully, aware of who is listening. Some mention the possibility of a uranium-based explosive. Others warn of radiation, an invisible effect that could explain the delayed deaths now being reported. There is no consensus, only fear. Then the radio goes quiet again. The Japanese public is told almost nothing. Newspapers speak of a new type of bomb without explanation. Censorship holds. The government fears panic more than ignorance, but inside the War Cabinet, options are narrowing. Across the Pacific, the United States waits. President Harry Truman has already authorized further use if Japan does not respond. The next target list, prepared under the Manhattan Project, includes Kokura, Niigata, and Nagasaki. The bombs are few, the window short. Weather, logistics, and secrecy now dictate strategy. At Tinian Island, crews rehearse again. Then comes a strategic realization on both sides. Hiroshima was not the final argument. It was a demonstration. The true impact of the atomic bomb lies not only in what it destroyed, but in what it threatened to repeat. In Tokyo, the Supreme Council for the Direction of the War meets, known as the Big Six. They are deadlocked, as they have been for months. Some argue for conditional surrender. Others insist on fighting on, betting on Soviet mediation or a costly American invasion. But Hiroshima introduces a new variable. For the first time, Japan faces a weapon that cannot be intercepted, dispersed, or absorbed. Air defenses mean nothing. Civil defense means nothing. One aircraft, one bomb, one city. Yet even now there is hesitation. Then, before any consensus can form, before Hiroshima's full meaning is understood, the situation accelerates. The order is already moving through American command channels. The second bomb is being prepared. The weather window is narrowing, and the war, instead of slowing, is about to lurch forward again. The moment for reflection is closing. Morning, Tinian Island. Engines warm in the humid Pacific air. Ground crews move with practiced efficiency, their faces unreadable. The B-29 Boxcar sits heavy on the runway, carrying a weapon even more powerful than the one dropped on Hiroshima. This bomb has a name, Fat Man, but no one uses it aloud. There is no ceremony, no speech, just a checklist. The mission plan is precise. Primary target, Kokura Arsenal. Secondary, Nagasaki. Weather will decide. The crew knows the stakes, but not the scale. They have been told only that success must be visually confirmed. Then, the order is given. The aircraft lifts off, disappearing into the glare of the rising sun. Hours later, over Kyushu, clouds thicken. Kokura is obscured by smoke from a conventional bombing raid the day before. The bombardier circles once, twice. Anti-aircraft fire begins to climb. Fuel is bleeding away faster than planned. The map is wrong. After 3 failed runs, the aircraft turns south. Nagasaki was never meant to be first. It is a backup. Industrial, important, but smaller. As Boxcar approaches, the city lies hidden beneath cloud and haze. Then, at the last moment, a gap opens. The bomb is released. 11:02 a.m. Nagasaki. The flash comes again. Hills amplify the blast, channeling destruction through the Urakami Valley. Factories vanish. A cathedral collapses. The shockwave rebounds off the terrain, twisting steel and stone into impossible shapes. This time, the damage is uneven, pockets of survival amid obliteration. Geography spares some districts and condemns others, but the message is unmistakable. Japan has now been struck twice in 3 days by a weapon that defies precedent. Back in Tokyo, confirmation arrives quickly. There is no confusion this time. The pattern is clear. Whatever this weapon is, the United States can use it again. Then the strategic equation shifts again. That same day, the Soviet Union launches Operation August Storm, pouring troops into Manchuria. The hope of Soviet mediation, carefully nurtured by Japanese diplomats, collapses overnight. Japan is now facing annihilation from the air and invasion from the north. Inside the Supreme Council chamber, voices rise. For the first time, fear breaks through discipline. Some argue that continued resistance will mean the destruction of the nation itself. Others insist surrender would end the imperial system. Then, the emperor intervenes. Hirohito has listened in silence for years. Now he speaks, not in public, but behind closed doors. The bombs, he says, have created a situation not necessarily to Japan's advantage. The language is restrained, the meaning is not. The initiative has shifted. The atomic bombs did not simply kill, they compressed time. They removed space for maneuver, and with the second strike, they closed the door on every remaining alternative. The war is no longer about victory. It is about survival. Late night, Tokyo. The air inside the Imperial Palace is heavy with exhaustion. Cigarette smoke hangs low. Papers lie scattered across the table. Casualty estimates, invasion maps, fragments of reports from cities that no longer exist. Outside, Tokyo is dark. Conserving power. Inside, the war reaches its breaking point. The Supreme Council for the direction of the war convenes again. The same 6 men. The same positions. But nothing else is the same. War Minister Korechika Anami argues that Japan can still inflict enough casualties during an American invasion to force better terms. The army, he insists, remains intact. Honor demands resistance. Across from him, Foreign Minister Shigenori Togo speaks quietly but urgently. Hiroshima and Nagasaki, he says, are not simply defeats, they are warnings. Japan cannot defend its people from this weapon. Then the radio goes silent again. Reports arrive of unexplained illnesses in Hiroshima. Soldiers who entered the city after the blast are collapsing days later. Burns without flames, death without wounds. The weapon's effects do not end when the explosion does. The council deadlocks, 3 for surrender, 3 against. The system is designed for consensus and cannot function without it. At just past midnight, an unprecedented step is taken. The emperor is summoned. Hirohito enters in formal dress, his expression controlled. This is not a speech for history, it is a private intervention. He listens as each minister speaks. He asks few questions. Then he delivers what will later be called the sacred decision. The war, he says, must end. Not because Japan has been defeated in battle, but because the continuation of the war would mean the annihilation of the Japanese people. The atomic bomb is mentioned indirectly, described as a weapon of incalculable damage. The phrase is deliberate. It allows surrender without naming defeat. The decision is made to accept the terms of the Potsdam Declaration with one condition: the preservation of the imperial institution. But even now, the danger is not over. Within the military, there is outrage. Some officers believe surrender is betrayal. In the early hours, a group attempts a coup, seizing parts of the palace, searching for the emperor's recorded surrender message. Orders are shouted. Doors are locked. Footsteps echo in corridors where history is about to fracture. Then the order changes. Loyal forces regain control. The recording survives. The coup collapses before dawn. For the first time in its history, Japan will surrender. The atomic bombs did not act alone. Firebombing, blockade, and Soviet entry all mattered. But Hiroshima and Nagasaki shattered the final illusion that Japan could absorb unlimited destruction and still negotiate from strength. They forced the emperor's hand. They ended the argument. And in doing so, they revealed the true impact of August 1945, not just the end of a war, but the birth of a world where a single decision could erase a city. Midday, Tokyo. The palace grounds are still. Cicadas hum in the trees. Inside a small broadcast studio, a microphone stands alone, its red light dark. Technicians move carefully, aware that history is balanced on fragile equipment and thinner nerves. At noon, Emperor Hirohito's voice goes out over the radio. Most Japanese citizens have never heard it before. It is high, formal, distant, spoken in court language few fully understand. He does not say the word surrender. He speaks, instead of enduring the unendurable, of a new and most cruel bomb whose power threatens the extinction of civilization itself. Across Japan, people kneel in the streets, some weep, others sit in stunned silence. Soldiers grip their rifles, unsure what the words mean for them. For a nation conditioned to fight to the end, the announcement feels unreal. The war is over. But the shadow of the atomic bomb does not lift with the ceasefire. It spreads. In Washington, officials framed the bombings as a necessary evil, an act that prevented Operation Downfall, the planned invasion of the Japanese home islands. The logic is simple and devastating. Two cities destroyed to avoid months of slaughter. The argument will shape decades of justification. Yet even among American leaders, there is unease. President Truman privately writes of the bomb as the most terrible thing ever discovered. Scientists from the Manhattan Project, some of whom urged a demonstration rather than use on cities, now confront what their work has unleashed. The strategic landscape has shifted. The atomic bomb ends World War II, but it also ends the assumption that wars are fought only by armies. Civilians are now central targets, not by accident, but by design. Deterrence replaces victory. Fear replaces defense. Then the initiative moves again. Within weeks, U.S. forces occupy Japan. General Douglas MacArthur arrives, issuing orders beneath the unspoken presence of the bomb. The emperor remains on the throne. But sovereignty has changed. The imperial system survives, but transformed. Meanwhile, in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, survival becomes its own battle. Hospitals overflow. Doctors document injuries they cannot explain. Hair falls out. Wounds reopen. Children sicken months later. The bomb's impact stretches forward in time, long after the flash has faded. The true impact of August 1945 is no longer confined to those 2 days. It is political, psychological, global. The world has learned that total war now carries an absolute endpoint, one beyond which civilization itself may not recover. Every future conflict will be measured against that knowledge. And as surrender papers are signed aboard the USS Missouri, the war ends, not with celebration, but with restraint. No victory parades in Japan, no triumph in the ruins, only the quiet understanding that something irreversible has entered human history. Morning, Hiroshima. The city wakes slowly, if it can be called waking at all. Smoke no longer rises in columns, but the air still tastes of ash and metal. Where neighborhoods once stood, there are open fields of rubble, flattened so completely that survivors struggle to describe where streets used to be. They search anyway. Men call out names that no longer answer. Children wander alone, clutching scraps of cloth that were once uniforms or school bags. The living move past the dead because there are too many to stop. Some bodies have no visible wounds. Others are burned beyond recognition. Death has become ordinary. Then the pattern breaks. People who seemed unharmed the day before begin to collapse. Fevers spike, gums bleed, purple spots bloom under the skin. Doctors record symptoms they have never seen. They have no word yet for radiation sickness, only the growing certainty that something unseen is still killing. In Nagasaki, the story repeats, shaped by hills and valleys. Entire communities in the Urakami district are gone, while others just beyond the ridges survive. Survivors speak of a flash, a pressure wave, and then silence so complete it felt like the world had ended. Relief arrives slowly. Japanese medical staff are overwhelmed. Supplies are scarce. Trains barely run. The first foreign doctors enter weeks later, documenting effects with clinical precision. Photographs are taken, samples collected. Suffering becomes data. Then comes censorship. Under Allied occupation, discussion of radiation effects is restricted. Images are controlled. Reports are classified. The bomb's long-term impact is studied quietly, even as survivors, hibakusha, are discouraged from speaking publicly. Many face stigma, believed to be contagious or damaged beyond recovery. The order has changed again. What began as an act to end a war has created a population defined by survival itself. Some will live with chronic illness, others with scars that never fade, many with grief that has no outlet. Yet life returns. Markets reopen in makeshift stalls. Schools resume classes in half-standing buildings. Children play among ruins because there is nowhere else. Grass pushes through cracked stone. The cities rebuild, not because the wounds have healed, but because stopping would mean surrendering again. The true impact of the atomic bombs is now measured not only in strategy, but in time. Their effects do not end when treaties are signed. They persist in bodies, in memory, in silence. And far beyond Japan, other nations are watching. Scientists elsewhere calculate yields. Military planners draft scenarios. Governments begin to imagine wars that must never be fought, but must always be prepared for. Hiroshima and Nagasaki are no longer just cities. They are warnings. And the survivors carry that warning into a future that did not ask for them, but depends on what their suffering teaches the world. Nightfall. The United Nations' future still unwritten. There is no parade to mark the true ending of World War II. No moment when the world exhales and moves on. Instead, there is a quiet recalibration. Nations reassessing power, vulnerability, and survival in the shadow of August 1945. The atomic bombs did more than end a war. They redrew the architecture of global order. Within months, the alliance that defeated Japan begins to fracture. The United States holds a weapon no one else possesses, for now. The Soviet Union accelerates its own atomic program, driven by urgency and fear. Espionage replaces diplomacy. Suspicion replaces trust. The Cold War begins not with gunfire, but with calculations. Military strategy changes fundamentally. Wars can no longer be won outright between major powers, only deterred. The idea of victory gives way to mutual destruction. Peace is no longer secured by strength alone, but by restraint, by the knowledge that escalation has no ceiling. Then the world absorbs the lesson Hiroshima and Nagasaki delivered without words. Civilian cities are no longer accidental victims of war. They are central to its logic. The atomic bomb makes this explicit. It forces a moral reckoning that never fully resolves. Can an act be justified if it prevents something worse? And who decides what worse means? The debate begins immediately and never ends. Some argue the bombs saved lives by avoiding invasion. Others point to Japan's collapsing position and question necessity. What remains undeniable is impact. Two explosions introduced a permanent condition into human history, the ability to end civilization in an afternoon. Treaties follow, arms control talks, hotlines between capitals, rituals of caution designed to prevent miscalculation. None of it erases the core reality that the threshold crossed in August 1945 cannot be uncrossed. Back in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, memorials rise where factories once stood. Names are carved into stone. Each year, bells ring at the exact moments the bombs fell. Silence is observed, not for the dead alone, but for the choice humanity now carries. The true impact of the atomic bombs is not confined to ruins or casualty counts. It is the burden placed on every generation since, a burden of awareness, of restraint, of memory. World War II ended with surrender, but it did not end with closure. It ended with a warning, written in nonce, light, fire, and shadow, that the survival of civilization now depends not on how wars are fought, but on whether they are fought at all.